At urgent care, my neighbor filled out a form. Her relationship answer stunned me family. That was the word Rachel Adams wrote on the urgent care form beneath relationship to patient. I saw it upside down from a vinyl chair while a nurse clipped a pulse monitor to my finger. My fever was over 103, and my last clear memory was unlocking my apartment before the hallway tilted sideways. Rachel, the neighbor I knew through elevator greetings and borrowed packages, had found me on the carpet, called for help, and held my head against her shoulder all the way across Denver. We had never shared dinner. I did not even know her middle name, yet she wrote family, as if there were no other answer. When I asked why, she looked at me with frightened blue eyes and said, "Because neighbor didn't explain why I was staying. I thought the fever had made me misunderstand." It hadn't. Rachel had been watching my lights for months, keeping a secret connected to my dead sister, and preparing to leave Denver before I learned the truth. Before I tell you why that single word nearly pulled us apart before bringing us together, please like, subscribe, and tell me, can someone become family before either person is brave enough to call it love? The nurse glanced from the form to Rachel, and apparently decided the answer was good enough. "He'll need someone with him tonight," she said, "assuming the tests don't show anything that requires the ER." The nurse guided me toward an exam room. Rachel followed with my coat folded over one arm, my wallet in her hand, and a look that suggested she had already accepted responsibility for every bad decision I might make while febrile. "My name is Michael Turner. I was 29, a systems security engineer handling municipal networks across Colorado. I had spent 11 days containing a ransomware attack, surviving on bad coffee, and the belief that sleep could wait until the crisis respected my calendar. It did not. The doctor diagnosed severe influenza and dehydration. My lungs sounded clear, which spared me a hospital transfer, but my blood pressure dropped whenever I stood. They gave me fluids, medication, and a lecture about the difference between commitment and self-destruction. Rachel sat beside the exam table and answered questions when I forgot dates. She knew about my drug allergy from overhearing me at the lobby pharmacy, knew my mother lived in Fort Collins from a misdelivered Christmas card, and knew my manager's name from an argument she had heard through my door. The doctor returned with discharge papers. No driving, no work, no being alone tonight. If he becomes confused, has trouble breathing, or can't keep fluids down, you take him to the ER. Rachel nodded like she was receiving mission orders. I said, "I can call someone." She looked at me. "Who?" The question landed harder than it should have. My mother and I had exchanged 3 texts in 2 months. My closest friend, Ben, lived in Colorado Springs with newborn twins. My co-workers liked me, but liking someone at a conference table was not the same as sitting beside their bed at 2 in the morning. I had built a life that looked efficient from the outside and felt strangely unoccupied when the lights went out. "I'll figure it out," I muttered. Rachel folded the papers. "You already did. I'm the person who found you." Outside, snow moved through the parking lot lights in silver sheets. Rachel zipped my coat to my throat before I could object. She had called another car and packed a tote with bottled water, crackers, and the prescriptions from the pharmacy next door. I work in crisis housing. That was the first substantial fact I learned about her. At 25, Rachel was a program coordinator for Harbor House, a non-profit that placed families in emergency apartments and operated warming centers during severe weather. She spent her days solving problems that arrived without warning. A mother with 2 children and no heat, an elderly man sleeping in his car, a domestic violence survivor who needed a hotel room under a different name. At our building, she led me past my own door. "My place," she said. "I have a bed. You also have a broken furnace." I stopped. "What?" "Maintenance put a notice under your door this afternoon. The boiler line serving your unit froze. They're working on it, but your apartment is 49 degrees. I looked at her, suddenly suspicious beneath the fever. How do you know the temperature? I used the spare key. You have my spare key? The leasing office gave it to me when they couldn't reach you. They're not supposed to do that. They had your written authorization. I never authorized you. Rachel's hand tightened around the tote. For half a second, something unguarded crossed her face. Guilt, maybe. Then she opened her apartment door. We can talk about that when you're not swaying. I wanted to demand an answer, but the smell of tomato soup and clean laundry drifted from her apartment, and my body betrayed every principle I had. I made it as far as her couch before my knees softened. Her place mirrored mine, but felt entirely different. Mine looked temporary after 4 years. Rachel's had warm lamps, mismatched pillows, paper snowflakes, and a kitchen wall covered in notes from families she had helped. One read, "Thank you for seeing us when we felt invisible." She covered me with a quilt and set water within reach. Rachel. What? The key. She stood very still. Tomorrow, she said. I promise. I should have pushed. Instead, I fell asleep before she finished closing the blinds. When I woke, the room was dark except for a lamp in the kitchen. Rachel sat at the table with her laptop open, speaking quietly into a headset. No, Mrs. Alvarez, listen to me. You and the boys are not going back outside. I have a room confirmed on Colfax. The driver will wait by the south entrance. Her voice was different from the one she used with me. Calm, low, absolute. She asked questions, typed notes, made 2 calls, and did not stop until she heard that a woman and her children were inside a warm car. I watched from the couch, ashamed that I had reduced her in my mind to the pretty neighbor from 4B. Later, while I ate the soup she had made, I put the spoon down. Why did you write family? Her gaze moved to the paper snowflakes on the window. Because emergency forms are bad at complicated relationships. Ours isn't complicated. We're neighbors. Is that all? I searched her face. I don't know. You tell me. She drew one knee toward her chest. I know you leave for work at 7:10 unless you've been up all night. I know you buy groceries on Thursdays and forget milk every other week. I know you keep your television on when you're not watching it because silence bothers you. I know you haven't put up a Christmas decoration since you moved in. And I know that when your lights stay off too long, I check the hallway because I'm afraid something happened. A chill moved through me that had nothing to do with fever. Why? She swallowed. Because someone once asked me to. The room sharpened around that sentence. Who? Rachel stood too quickly and carried the bowl to the sink. Tomorrow, Michael. No, you promised tomorrow about the key. This is different. She gripped the edge of the counter. You're sick, you're exhausted, and you deserve the whole truth when you can actually process it. That sounds like something people say right before the truth gets worse. She turned. It gets harder, not worse. I did not know what that meant, but the medication pulled me under again before I could force the answer. The next morning, I woke to sunlight reflected off snow and the smell of coffee I was not allowed to drink. My fever had dropped below 100. Rachel had left a note on the table. Shower if you can stand. Clean clothes outside the bathroom. Do not attempt heroics. The clean sweatshirt outside the bathroom was mine. I found her in the kitchen packing sandwiches and held up one sleeve. Before you explain the key, I said, explain how my clothes got here. She set the sandwich down carefully. Your mother put my name on the emergency access form. I stared at her. Rachel removed an envelope from beneath her laptop and placed it between us. My mother's handwriting covered the front. Michael, when you are ready. I did not touch it. How do you know my mother? Rachel's eyes filled, but she did not look away. I knew your sister. Everything in me stopped. My younger sister, Olivia, had been dead for 14 months. She had been 26, loud, funny, and incapable of entering a room without changing its temperature. An emergency room nurse in Boulder, she believed persistence and snacks could solve almost anything. During her last year, we barely spoke. Our father had left when we were teenagers. Olivia forgave him after he got sober. I did not. When she invited him to her graduation, I skipped it. She said I used anger as a locked door. I said forgiveness without consequences was weakness. 3 months later, she died when a delivery truck lost control on black ice and crossed the center line outside Idaho Springs. I attended the funeral, stood beside my mother, accepted condolences, and avoided every story that made Olivia feel alive enough to hurt. Rachel reached toward the envelope, then stopped herself. Olivia was my best friend. I tried to connect her face to the crowded church, to Olivia's photographs, to names I had refused to learn. You were at the funeral, in the back, and you moved next door to me. Yes. By accident? Her silence answered. The apartment suddenly felt staged. The tea, the lights, the exact count of our conversations, the spare key. You came here to watch me. No, I came to Denver for the Harbor House job. Your mother told me there was an opening in this building. That is not the same thing. I know. She asked you to spy on me? She asked me to make sure you were alive. A bitter laugh escaped me. So you monitored my schedule and reported back? Rachel's voice dropped. Once a month, I told her your lights were on. I stepped backward as if she had struck me. Then why did you do it? Because after Olivia died, your mother was terrified she would lose you too. Because you stopped answering her calls. Because the first week I lived here, I heard something crash in your apartment and stood outside your door for 10 minutes, trying to decide whether knocking would make you hate me. Her refusal to defend herself made my anger harder to hold and impossible to release. Rachel pushed the envelope toward me. Olivia wrote this the week before the accident. She never mailed it. Why keep it for 14 months? Her voice shook. Because I was a coward. I looked around the apartment and saw evidence everywhere. A framed photograph on the bookshelf had been turned face down. I crossed the room and lifted it. Olivia and Rachel stood on a mountain overlook, cheeks red from wind, arms around each other. Olivia wore the yellow scarf I had given her one Christmas. Rachel was laughing into her shoulder. The picture did what 14 months of avoidance had not. It made my sister real. I set it down and said I needed to go home. Rachel moved away from the door without pleading. I'll bring your medication at noon, she said. You can decide whether to open the door. I carried the envelope back to my apartment and left it unopened on the kitchen counter. For 2 days, Rachel knocked at the exact times printed on my medication schedule. I never answered, but each time I found water, soup, and a fresh thermometer outside my door. She did not include notes. She did not ask forgiveness. She did not use Olivia's name as leverage. My fever disappeared. My anger did not. I called my mother on the 3rd morning. She answered before the first ring finished. Michael, you put Rachel on my access form. You gave her my building and asked her to watch me. I was afraid, she said. My mother had always been a force, a school principal who could organize a funeral while her heart was breaking. Hearing fear in her voice unsettled me, but it did not erase the violation. You called, I said, remembering the unanswered intercom. 43 times. Then I came down, and you would not let me upstairs. I panicked. I was wrong. I had prepared for excuses. Her apology left nowhere for my rage to perform. Did Rachel report on me? Only that your lights came on sometimes. She refused to share anything personal. She told me that if I wanted a relationship with my son, I had to build one myself. My mother inhaled shakily. She wanted to tell you the first day. I asked her not to lead with Olivia because I knew you would shut the door. That does not make it right. No, she said. It doesn't. For the first time, the unopened envelope seemed less like a weapon and more like a choice everyone had been waiting for me to make. Before we hung up, my mother said, "Rachel did not write family because I asked her to." I ended the call and listened to the furnace click back to life. At noon, Rachel knocked. I opened the door. She had a paper bag in one hand and her coat already on, as though she did not expect to be invited inside. I took the bag. My mother said you wanted to tell me. I should have. Why didn't you? Rachel looked down the hallway. Because the first time I saw you, you were carrying a box from Olivia's apartment to the dumpster. You looked like a man trying to erase evidence that he had loved someone, Rachel continued. I thought telling you I knew her would be cruel. Her willingness to accept the truth took some heat out of mine. Why did Olivia write the letter? I don't know. She wrote it after you two fought. She told me she was tired of waiting for you both to become less stubborn. I'm leaving Denver, she said. The sentence struck with ridiculous force. When? 3 weeks. Harbor House lost the city contract for the overnight warming program. Minneapolis offered me a director position. You accepted? Yesterday. You made that decision yesterday? I was already considering it. Yesterday clarified things. So this is because I'm angry. No. This is because I built my life around helping other people stay, and I need to choose a place where my own work can survive. Her boundary was clean. I could not argue with it without proving I still saw her choices as extensions of mine. What happens to the warming center? The pilot closes at the end of the month, unless we replace the funding and the technology sponsor. We need an intake system, secure records, insurance, and staff. The city will not approve a program held together with spreadsheets and prayer. I looked at the Harbor House logo on her bag. Why didn't you ask me about the intake system? A sad smile touched her mouth. Because caring about you and using you are two different things. She walked toward the stairwell. Rachel. She turned. At the clinic, I said, when you wrote family, was that because of Olivia? Her eyes glistened. At first, Olivia was the reason I watched your door. She is not the reason I learned the sound of your laugh. Then she left. I returned to work the next day because I had always known how to solve discomfort by replacing it with obligations. My manager, Carl, greeted me with relief and a stack of incident reports. We need the county remediation plan by Friday. I thought of Rachel sitting beside my couch while saving a family from the cold. I thought of the word family written without hesitation. Then I thought of the unopened letter. No, I said. I can review critical alerts for 1 hour. After that, Ben can lead. Carl stared. Is there a problem? There has been one for a while, I said. I just kept calling it dedication. I went home after an hour. The envelope waited where I had left it. I carried it to the couch, opened it with a kitchen knife, and unfolded 3 pages covered in Olivia's impatient handwriting. Michael, you are probably still angry, which means you are probably pretending not to care. You have always confused distance with control. If you leave first, no one gets to abandon you. If you stop answering, no one can say the wrong thing. It worked when Dad left. It does not work on everyone else. I paused. Even dead, Olivia refused to soften a diagnosis. She wrote about our father, about my mother, about the graduation. She admitted she had used forgiveness to avoid setting boundaries, while I had used boundaries to avoid forgiveness. Then she wrote about Rachel. My friend Rachel says family is whoever keeps showing up after the dramatic part is over. I think you would like her, which is unfortunate because you are both impossible. She makes lists when she is scared. You fix things when you are scared. Neither of you admits to being scared. I laughed once, painfully. The final paragraph was shorter. I am not asking you to forgive, Dad. I am asking you not to turn love into a test people can only pass by leaving. Call me when you are ready. I will answer. I pressed the pages to my forehead. Olivia had not lived long enough to answer. For 14 months, I had treated that fact as proof that reaching out was dangerous. The letter said the opposite. Time was dangerous. Silence was simply easier to blame. That evening, I knocked on Rachel's door. She opened it wearing paint-stained overalls, her hair tied on top of her head. Behind her, cardboard boxes lined the wall. You pack fast, I said. I make lists. I read the letter. Her expression changed, but she did not ask what it said. I'm sorry, I told her. Not for being angry. I had a right to be angry. But I used the anger to avoid every other thing I felt. Rachel leaned against the doorframe. What other things? Grief, embarrassment, gratitude, the fact that you matter to me more than a neighbor should. She looked at the boxes. I'm not asking you to stay, I said. I don't get to make your career smaller because I finally became honest. Then why are you here? You said the warming center needs a secure intake system. Her eyes narrowed. Michael, I can build one. I won't accept it as an apology. Good. It isn't one. As a reason for me to stay? No. What is it? I took a breath. The first useful thing I can do without hiding inside it. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she stepped aside. The Harbor House office occupied the second floor of a converted brick school in 5 Points. The next morning, Rachel introduced me to her director, Denise Walker, a 60-year-old woman with silver braids and no patience for charm. We cannot pay your consulting rate, Denise said. I'm volunteering. Give me a deadline and fire me if I miss it. Her eyebrows rose. 10 days. We need secure intake, bed tracking, city reporting, and a security review. Then I need access by noon. For the next week, I worked mornings for my employer and evenings at Harbor House. I did not knock on Rachel's door unless the work required it. I did not mention the letter. I did not turn each useful act into a claim on her attention. That restraint was harder than any grand gesture. Rachel was formidable at Harbor House. She knew every volunteer's strength, every family's dietary restriction, and every city regulation that might delay approval. She could comfort a crying child while negotiating with a hotel manager and correcting a budget line. She also had a temper she disguised as excessive politeness. We shared noodles in the old teacher's lounge. Snow tapped against the windows. For the first time since the urgent care visit, the silence between us felt chosen rather than damaged. Olivia hated noodles, Rachel said. She said they looked like electrical cords. Rachel smiled. She once ate an entire bowl during a 12-hour shift and complained every minute. I looked down at my food. Tell me something about her I don't know. Rachel's smile faded into something gentler. She told me Olivia sang to frightened patients, even though she could not carry a tune. She told me Olivia kept spare socks in her car for people discharged without shoes. She told me my sister had forgiven our father but never lent him money after his second relapse. Boundaries, I said. She learned them. Maybe I could have too, if I had answered. Rachel shook her head. Do not use hindsight to punish yourself. She wanted a call. She did not want your life sentence. I met her eyes. Is that what you want too? What? For me not to punish myself. I want you to stop making punishment look like loyalty. The air shifted. I reached across the table, not for her hand, but close enough that she could choose. Rachel looked at the space between us, then placed her fingers over mine. It lasted 5 seconds. Then a motel called about a family whose reservation had vanished from its system. I drove Rachel across town, found an automated cancellation in the email trail, and stood beside her while she made the manager honor the paid booking. The mother hugged Rachel in the parking lot after her children were safely inside. On the drive back, Rachel rested her head against the passenger window. She smiled, then grew serious. Minneapolis wants my answer confirmed by Monday. Hope rose before I could stop it. I pushed it back down. What do you want? I asked. She watched the snowbanks pass. I want the Denver program to survive. I want to stop living in a place chosen because it was near someone else's grief. I want a home that is mine. Her honesty hurt, but it was clean. At the building, she paused beside my door. Then she looked at me in a way that erased the hallway. I did not write family because I wanted to replace Olivia, she said. And I did not help you because your mother asked. Not after the first month. I stepped closer. Why after the first month? Because you carried groceries for Mrs. Hanley when her wrist was broken. Because you fixed the lobby camera and refused payment. Because you pretend not to like children, but you keep dinosaur stickers in your laptop bag for Ben's twins. Her smile trembled. I wanted to kiss her. Every part of me knew it. But wanting did not erase the secret between us or the decision waiting on Monday. A kiss could become pressure, apology, or farewell, depending on which fear spoke loudest. So I touched her cheek and said, I'm glad you stayed that night. She leaned into my hand for one breath. So am I. Then she went inside. The next complication arrived through my mother. She came to Harbor House on Saturday, carrying 3 boxes of donated blankets and the confidence of someone who believed a good deed granted immediate access. I saw her before Rachel did. My mother looked older than she had at Olivia's funeral, though perhaps grief had changed my measuring system. Rachel emerged from the supply room and stopped. My mother crossed the distance quickly. Rachel, I am so sorry. Michael told me. Rachel came closer. I can hear it now. My mother clasped her hands. I put you in an impossible position. I used your love for Olivia and my fear for Michael. I told myself I was connecting 2 lonely people, but I was controlling both of you. Rachel nodded. I agreed to it, and that part is mine. I had imagined this apology many times, usually with sharper language and greater satisfaction. In reality, it made me sad. I believe you, I said. But you cannot ask other people to enter my life for you. You cannot come to my home or my work without calling. If I do not answer, you can leave a message. You do not get to create access. And I have to answer sometimes, I added. That part is mine. My mother stayed 2 hours, labeling shelves. She and Rachel worked in the same room without trying to rebuild 14 months in an afternoon. Before leaving, she hugged me. I almost stiffened. Then I hugged her back. That night, Rachel found me installing tablets near the intake desk. I thought you might defend your mother because she was afraid. Fear explains things. It doesn't own the consequences. She sat on the edge of the desk. The city reviewer is coming Monday morning. If we pass, they will authorize a 30-day emergency pilot. It is not full funding, but it keeps the doors open. Then we won't fail. Monday arrived with a blizzard warning and a server failure. At 6:15 in the morning, Denise called me. The Harbor House database would not load. The city reviewer was due at 9. Rachel's Minneapolis contract expired at noon. I drove through heavy snow and found Rachel beneath the intake desk tracing cables with a flashlight between her teeth. Power surge at 4. Backup is online, but the application cannot reach the database. I opened my laptop. The new security certificate had failed to renew because the old sponsor's account had been canceled overnight. At 8:50, the reviewer, Mr. Keene, arrived. I was on hold with a technician in Arizona, while Rachel led him through the sleeping area, child-safe section, medication lockers, and incident procedures. At 9:20, the system still failed. My phone buzzed with an email from Carl, demanding that I join a county call because the account was my responsibility. It had been. I had spent years making myself the person every emergency required. That role felt important until I understood it was partly a hiding place. If everyone needed me professionally, I never had to ask whether anyone wanted me personally. I forwarded the file and turned off my work phone. At 9:38, the certificate validated. The database loaded. Rachel entered a test family, assigned beds, generated the city report, and locked the record. Mr. Keene tested every permission level twice. The technology meets the pilot standard, he said. But the Weather Service upgraded the storm. The city may activate emergency operations tonight. Can you open early? Yes, Rachel said. The warming center had been scheduled to open Friday. Instead, 40 cots had to be ready by 6 that evening. Volunteers called pharmacies, grocery stores, churches, and transportation companies. I configured tablets while snow erased the street outside. At 11:45, Rachel's phone displayed an incoming call from Minneapolis. She took it in the stairwell. I did not follow. I did not listen through the door. I kept working. When she returned, she slipped the phone into her pocket. They needed a final answer. I gave them one. What did you say? After tonight, she said. Not in the middle of this. It was not the answer I wanted. It was the boundary she needed. By 4, the storm had shut down 2 bus routes. At 4:30, the first family arrived. A father with a toddler wrapped inside his coat. By 5, every volunteer was busy. The center filled faster than predicted. I helped an older couple enter their information, found a charger for a teenager's insulin monitor, and showed volunteers how to mark beds without exposing names on the public screen. Rachel moved through the room with the same focused calm I had heard the night I woke on her couch. Then Mrs. Alvarez arrived with her 2 boys, the family Rachel had placed in a motel while I lay sick on her sofa. She hugged Rachel and whispered, "You found us again." That was the moment I understood Rachel's definition of family. It was not possession. It was not blood used as a claim. It was not watching someone from a distance and calling fear love. It was showing up, then allowing the other person to decide whether you could stay. At 8:30, the center reached capacity. The city opened an overflow site and used our bed tracking system to route the next arrivals. The technology worked. The volunteers worked. Rachel's pilot worked. She stood by the window, watching snow bury the cars. "You did it," I said. "We did it." "No. The system is a tool. This room exists because you refused to let a lost contract decide what these people deserved." She looked around at the children sleeping beneath donated blankets, the parents charging phones, the volunteers pouring coffee. "My mother died in a motel," she said quietly. I had known her mother was dead. I had not known how. Rachel continued before I could speak. "She left my father when I was 19. She was too proud to call me, too ashamed to tell anyone she had nowhere to go. By the time I found her, she had been sick for days. I'm sorry." That is why I notice lights. It started before your mother ever called me. I check doors, I count windows. I tell myself that if I pay attention, no one will disappear alone. The truth shifted something inside me. Her vigilance had never been only about Olivia or my mother. It came from her own wound, one she had turned into work and sometimes into control. You cannot save everyone, I said. I know. Do you? She gave me a tired smile. I'm learning it slowly, and admitting it tonight. Her eyes filled. I reached for her hand. This time she took mine immediately. What did you tell Minneapolis? I asked. Rachel looked towards the room. I turned it down. Hope moved through me so sharply I almost mistrusted it. Because of the pilot? Because I want to build this program? Because Denver became mine somewhere along the way? Because leaving was starting to feel like another version of hiding? Because of me? She squeezed my hand. You are part of Denver. I stepped closer. I need to tell you something without turning it into a reason you owe me anything. I said, I'm in love with you. The humor left her face. I don't know when it happened, I continued. Maybe before the clinic, maybe when you knew I forgot milk, maybe when you told me I was difficult and stayed anyway. But I know this. I do not want you as proof that Olivia forgave me. I do not want you as the person my mother assigned to keep me alive. I want you as Rachel, the woman who makes 9 lists, terrifies motel managers, and writes family before anyone gives her permission. I wrote family because I was scared they would make me leave, she said. I thought if I wrote neighbor, they would tell me I didn't belong beside you. Do I belong beside you? Rachel looked around the warming center, at the life she had chosen before she looked back at me. Yes, she said, but not because Olivia wanted us to meet, not because your mother was afraid, and not because you built a database. She touched my face. You belong because I choose you. Then she kissed me. It was not a dramatic movie kiss. We were exhausted, standing beside a supply closet, while a coffee machine sputtered behind us, and a child asked someone for a purple blanket. It was better. Her mouth was warm. Her hand trembled against my cheek. I held her as carefully as if we were both learning a new definition of safety. We finished the shift at 2 a.m. Outside, the storm had softened. Snow covered the city in deep silence. I walked Rachel home, even though we lived 3 doors apart. At her apartment, the moving boxes still lined the wall. She opened her door, then turned back. You should know something. Dating me does not make every boundary disappear. I will not monitor your lights without asking. I will answer when you knock. I will not report to your mother. I will call her myself. I will not become your entire support system. I'll keep therapy on Thursday and Ben on speed dial. She kissed me again. Good night, family. Rachel unpacked. The city extended the warming center pilot through spring, then approved a full year after the data showed fewer emergency room visits and safer placements. Harbor House hired her as Director of Housing Response. She negotiated the salary instead of accepting the first offer, a victory she celebrated with champagne and an 11-item budget. I stayed at my company, but changed roles. I stopped being the permanent emergency contact for every client and trained a response team that could function without my insomnia. Carl called it a leadership transition after realizing boundary crisis would look bad in a memo. My mother and I rebuilt slowly. We spoke every Sunday, named anger before hanging up, and planned visits instead of forcing them. I met my father once in a coffee shop, not to forgive him on command, but to explain what access to my life required. Whether he could meet those conditions remained his work. Rachel hated olives, loved old detective shows, and sang while assembling furniture. I liked my towels folded in thirds, could not dance, and became irrationally competitive at miniature golf. We argued about work hours, Christmas plans, and whether 9 throw pillows constituted a public hazard. When I felt hurt, I still wanted silence. I learned to say, I need an hour, but I am coming back. On the first anniversary of the urgent care night, Rachel woke with a fever. It was only a mild flu, but I approached it with the solemnity of a military operation. I took her to the same clinic, carried water, and filled out the forms while she sat wrapped in my coat. At relationship to patient, I paused. I wrote family. Then I crossed it out. Underneath, I wrote fiancé. For the first time since I had known her, Rachel Adams had no answer ready. I reached into my coat and took out a small ring. I had planned to ask at the warming center after the evening shift, with Denise hiding behind a donation bin and my mother waiting under strict instructions not to improvise. But watching Rachel stare at that form, I understood there was no better place. A year earlier, she had claimed a place beside me before I knew how much courage it cost. Now I wanted to claim a life beside her with full consent, no secret assignment, and no fear disguised as control. I love you, I said. I love the family we chose, the work you choose, and the person you are when no one needs rescuing. Will you marry me? Yes, she whispered. But I'm still keeping my own apartment until the lease ends. Rachel held out her hand. I slid the ring onto her finger. The nurse reached us, looked at the form, and said, So which relationship should I enter? Rachel stood, slipped her fingers through mine, and answered for both of us. Family, she said. The chosen kind. That winter I had thought being alone made me safe. Rachel taught me that safety was not the absence of need. It was the presence of choice. Family was not the person who watched from the hallway forever. Family was the person who knocked, told the truth, respected the answer, and remained when staying became mutual. Sometimes the most important relationship in your life begins before you have a name for it. If this story reminded you of someone who kept showing up, tell them while there is still time. And subscribe for more stories about love that earns the word family.